Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to the year 2022 and the first FPC NFL Sunday of the brand new year. And that's right, folks, it's week 17. And in years past, this would be the very last week of the regular season. But not this year. That's right, folks. We got one more week after this. So plenty of things still need to be figured out, plenty of playoff implications, plenty of playoff clinching scenarios, and of course, the fight for both the top seeds in the conference is still ongoing. Although, again, the two teams sitting at top right now have a pretty clear path to keep that position. So, first and foremost, Braden, Ricky, good morning. Happy New Year. How are we feeling on this nice Sunday in January?
It's definitely not the best slate this year, but there's still a few games that are really feeling like there could be some craziness go on today. So just expecting anything and everything on this NFL Sunday.
Yeah, basically, as Braden said, this NFL Sunday could have the feeling of yesterday's New Year's Day bowl games where I think Jackson Smith and Jigba for Ohio State is still catching passes. And I mean, same year, new year, but hey, Notre Dame still blows big games. I mean, that's not a surprise either. And I feel bad for Matt Corral too. Hopefully he gets back.
No, that's an unfortunate storyline on the backdrop of that. But to your point, some things just never change. And speaking of Notre Dame, that's pretty much what I'm getting at. But forget college football. I'm here to push agendas, guys. We have a lot of things to talk about. I mentioned the top seeds. I mentioned playoff races. The most important race, though, or at least the one that I've devoted quite a bit of time to over the last several weeks, is the MVP race. And you see up there, it's a nice little graphic that I put together to help kind of put on display a little bit of what the big picture is when it comes to the MVP race. Because in my opinion, and I know folks out there disagree with me when it comes to wide receivers and running backs in the MVP race. I just don't think that it's a logical conclusion because, just inherently the quarterback is the most valuable player on the football field. So I think the best quarterback / the most valuable quarterback is automatically the most valuable player in the league. I think Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, for example, are neck and neck in the offensive player of the year category, which I'll define it as an offensive player that performs above their peers, like at a high level above their peers. And both those players are doing that. Whereas Brady and Rodgers, although I think they're both the best two quarterbacks in the league, there's other quarterbacks that aren't far off from them. I mean, they're far enough away that they're not in the MVP discussion. But the point is, they're closer to their peers than those two individual offensive players. So anyway, so in my opinion, the race is down to the two quarterbacks and much like the opposite to a lot of national media. I believe that Tom Brady is very clearly still the front runner. And the majority, the biggest point, the biggest reason for that is Aaron Rodgers' entire MVP case is heavily reliant on raw interception totals. And I say that because, that helps his EPA per play a lot. It helps his QBR. It helps his passer rating. All these things that he's quote unquote number one in. Obviously Brady shares a number of those different things. And I have a graphic or a caption up here that I'm going to remove. But if you look in the bottom, depending on which EPA you choose, again, I couldn't tell you which is better, why they're better, but I put them both up there to kind of show that stats aren't perfect. ESPN has them higher than Aaron Rodgers in both categories. So the bigger picture being, okay, interception totals favors Aaron Rodgers, 4-11. That's hard to dispute, except when you look at the turnover worthy plays and the number of drops, which I think is a massive disparity. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been really pushing that narrative because I feel very strongly that the guy that's been leading the league in passing, leading the league in touchdowns, leading the second best offense points per game. That's another big disparity. Green Bay's 13th. That's outside the top 10. That's mediocre at best. Against a easier schedule, as you can see, the Buccaneers against defenses have faced the number one toughest schedule at this point in the season. The Packers, number 19. So To me, I feel very, very strongly that Tom Brady has been in the clear front runner in this race. And with a game against the Jets today, I think he can hammer it home and pretty much solidify his case for his 4th MVP. Not that, again, he necessarily cares about it, because obviously he cares more about his Super Bowl championship. But for myself, someone who's been pushing this and trying to fight back every name on the list when it comes to who's the MVP over Tom Brady, I feel like we've been doing this since week 8. It was Lamar Jackson. It was Kyler Murray. At one point, Kyler Murray was brought up, and he had missed 3 games. So, what are we doing here? So, guys, am I making a convincing case? Have I caused you to second guess some of the national narrative out here? Because again, the big picture, if you want to look at surface stats, yeah, Aaron Rodgers looks like a pretty fine case. That touchdown to interception ratio, oh boy, man, that is spicy. But if you look beyond that, as you can see, I think Tom Brady is the clear front runner.
Yeah, I guess for me with Rodgers, I guess I don't understand how they can kind of put somebody there that hasn't really been at the highest level all season long. I mean, I think if you look at Brady, if there's any mistakes on his resume, it's been obviously lesser weeks that it has happened. I think you also, like you said, taking the schedule into account, I think it has a lot to kind of do with that as well. I think Rodgers in some of his more maybe advantageous spots, and of course it is hard to win in the NFL, but I think when you kind of expect Rodgers, what we saw from him last season, those are kind of matchups this season where you kind of just expect him to pad the stats a little bit, and obviously dealt with COVID that 1 week and missed, but coming back off that, it was definitely probably one of the worst stretches I can remember him playing over the last couple of years. So I just think when you take into account like the full picture all season long, I think Brady just his kind of consistency and his level of play definitely never wavered as much as Rodgers has.
And real quick before I'll let you chime in a second, Ricky. But Brady, you brought up a couple points I want to key in on. One of the big things, Rodgers, last 5 games have been 16 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and I think like 1,400 and change yards. And it's like that's impressive. No one's saying otherwise, but Tom Brady's had 2 such stretches this season of very similar, if not better, production. First 5 games this season, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And if we want to go back to those first 2 interceptions of the season and you want to argue that those were on Brady, then by all means, go for it. But I'm just going to tell you you're wrong. 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,717 yards. And the big thing about that was, of those 5 teams that he faced, 3 of them were in the top 5 passing defense. We're talking about the Rams, Dallas, and New England, all top pass defenses. Aaron Rodgers in this past 5-game stretch won, the LA Rams. The rest were mediocre to bad. So, and then the following 5 games, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but still the yardage total was even more. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't have another 5-game stretch throughout the season that matches or comes really anywhere close to what he did these last 5 games. So, sorry, go ahead, Ricky.
I mean, if you want stat padding, I mean, Rodgers does play the Vikings tonight, which don't have a secondary, and then plays the Lions week 18. So, I mean, if you were looking for stat padding to go up, it's probably going to go up the next 2 weeks, especially since Green Bay is going to need both those games to win home field. I think it's definitely a good argument. I could see someone saying, I'm Ian Glendon, and I approve this message after your whole argument there. I will say, you look at this Packer team, and Braden brought it up, when Aaron Rodgers missed the game against the Chiefs with COVID, their offense looked awful. And I mean, no disrespect to Jordan Love, who's playing his first game, but it's night and day. Now, if you took Tom Brady out, it'd probably look the same way. So that's probably not a fair argument. I agree. Not all interceptions are created equal, especially when you had that streak of interceptions, like a lot of drops, and you have the graphic there. I think it's close, but you look at Aaron. I mean, I know the stats are not great on Aaron Rodgers. Like you look at the yards per game are not where they should be compared to Brady. But ever since week 1 against the Saints, I mean, we really haven't seen that dramatic of a drop off of Aaron Rodgers. And when you look back at the Saints, that was week 1 when they were at full strength. I mean, yes, Brady had all those injuries against the Saints, but they didn't score a point in that game. And you got to find a way to get a point.
Yeah, but in that case, that's a difference between Ryan Suckup hitting or not hitting a
True.
field goal, which is what happened. And I'm kind of glad because this was also something that was kind of argued per Rodgers was that he's been more consistent. And I'm like, you can argue that he's been more consistent, but he's been consistently mediocre. Like just because he's been consistently mediocre doesn't make him having a better season. Because if you look across his schedule, he's thrown 4 touchdowns 3 times. That's come against Minnesota. To your point, Ricky, Minnesota and Detroit, one of each, and I think I'm blanking on the third team. But other than that, it's a lot of 2 touchdowns, 200 yards. There's a reason why they're outside the top 10 offensively as a team because, well, he's been a guy. I mean, he's been really good these last 5 weeks. I'm not denying that. I don't, overall, I think, and I've said this since the start of the season, that Brady and Rodgers are still the 2 best quarterbacks in the league. I just think that, again, outside of these 5 weeks and outside of the touchdown to interception ratio, Rodgers has been kind of just the guy. I mean, you can look across the board and say, look, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has dealt with more issues. Like, he's right up there with Tom. I mean, Tom kind of has a little bit of a difference now. I think Mahomes might be at like 26 or 27 drops, but he's been impacted far greater than Aaron Rodgers. And like, the other contention, Aaron Rodgers is doing this without this guy, and this guy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, okay, well, Tom, AB was out for half the season. Rob Gronkowski missed about 6-7 weeks. Mike Evans was out last week. Fournette was out last week. Chris Godwin was out last week. They're going to miss this week, or Godwin will and Fournette will. They've suffered injuries as well. So, what's really being propped up for Aaron Rodgers to me is such a thin and weak case because, again, it hinges so much really on that raw interception total. And I think, again, when you really deep dive into it, you can sit here and argue and say, yeah, I mean, well, there's 4 interceptions, and I went through and I actually watched the tape because I like to have a little bit more confidence in what I'm talking about. I hate being called out and being like, hey, that's not true, and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta admit I'm wrong. I hate that. So I went back and I looked, and there's 3 interceptions thrown by Brady. That one was off Fournette's hand, the other was Tyler Johnson. It was that weird pass where he caught it, went to turn, got hit, the ball goes straight up in the air and goes to a defender. And then there was a 3rd interception that went off, I think, Chris Godwin's hands. And then you factor in the interception at the end of the first half against Dallas, the Hail Mary, where again, it's the end of the half, no time, you throw it up. If it gets picked, it gets picked. I don't really care about that. That's 4. All of a sudden, you're looking at Tom Brady having 37-7 versus 33-4. And again, that's how thin I think Aaron Rodgers' case is when you look at it. Now, Tom could go out and have a bad game this weekend. Aaron Rodgers could go out and produce, and my case would be absolutely shot. But that hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to happen because I do think that Tom's going to have a really good game, and I think it's only going to strengthen his case. So if people have to get sick of me talking about this for me to prove my point, then that's what I'm going to do, and that's how we're going to keep pushing this, guys. And hopefully I can update this graphic and be happy doing it and not be sad and pretty much have to admit defeat after this afternoon. So that's how I feel. But that's that. So anyways, okay. Go ahead, Brady.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay. All right. No, I tend to ramble on these things a little bit, so I don't want to drag on too much. But if anyone has any other points, I'd be happy to hear them, and of course, try to respond if necessary. But anyway, so obviously, quarterbacks are always going to be a big topic of conversation, and of course, they're going to be not just Brady and Rodgers. Obviously, we talk about Mahomes and all that, but a couple of key injuries this week. First of all, you mentioned the Minnesota Vikings game. We already know that Kirk Cousins is not going to be out or not going to be playing because of COVID. Jimmy G does not look like he's going to be playing, and he's heading for surgery at some point in this offseason. And Lamar Jackson, once again, will be missing. So, thoughts, biggest concern for one of these teams? I got to believe it's Minnesota. I mean, just because of the where they're at, who they're playing, the loss, and again, I mean, realistically, a backup. They probably have the weakest backup situation. Minnesota in the biggest trouble of these 3 teams?
I don't know. I think I'd almost go San Francisco just because I think there's a little more. I mean, I guess, like you said, Minnesota, they're in a tough spot. I think there's almost more unknown in San Francisco, especially into next season. So, and the Niners can obviously find themselves out of the playoff race by the end of the day. So, I don't know. I think I'd go for 49ers just because Texans right now, they're playing spoiler. They're playing really good defense, and I think this is kind of one of those games where Kyle Shanahan, I think you just could also put on his resume if they struggle, why he's maybe not getting more criticism some of the time. So Minnesota, I don't think is that far off, but I would have to go San Francisco here.
And this is no disrespect to the Texans, who have played really well last week against the Chargers with most of their roster on COVID and Brandon Cooks on COVID. But it's still the Texans start. It's at least at home in this kind of game. And look, maybe Kyle Shanahan finds something with Lance in this game and they can implement some kind of 2-quarterback system in the playoffs. Because when you saw the Niners against the Titans a week ago, they need a more consistent offense. They need a guy that's not going to make mistakes, needs to take the simple routes. Maybe Trey Lance can do that. Maybe they go with more checkdowns. Maybe they go with not making the mistake. So I don't think San Francisco is in too much trouble, because even if they do lose, you look at the rest of the NFC, San Francisco should make the playoffs. And if they don't, then something's wrong in San Francisco. To me, the Vikings are in trouble, and really Mike Zimmer can only hang his hat on Kirk Cousins being out if he's trying to save his job. But I look at Baltimore, and today is an opportunity for Tyler Huntley to make some money. If he has a good game today against the Rams, somebody's going to sign him to be a starter or compete for a starting job. He's done a pretty admirable job considering Lamar Jackson's been there for a while. And I know people don't tend to feel bad for John Harbaugh and feel bad for the Ravens because they're usually in it every year, but they are clearly out of gas. They clearly don't have anybody left on that roster. And just the fact that they're in the playoff race, and if they somehow win today, they have, I think ESPN's FPI like a 60% chance to make it. We'll see if they bring a good effort today against LA.
One real quick thing, EPA per play. Jimmy Garoppolo is the second best quarterback in the league. Just chew on that for a minute there, folks. And that's that's one of the strong Aaron Rodgers points. No, I think there's a strong case for all these teams to struggle a bit. But to your point, Ricky, I think Huntley has an opportunity here, and he looked good last week. And this is a situation where Lamar Jackson, even if he was playing, might not be a good option for the Ravens because he really hasn't been playing well. When he's been when he's been on the field, he hasn't been playing well this season. So it's going to be tough. I'm disappointed that Kirk Cousins. I mean, this is just how the universe works. I talked about it when we opened the show. Of course, Kirk Cousins in one of the biggest games of this season is going to miss because of COVID. And the reason he's missing it, even with the NFL's laxed protocol now that got implemented about a week and a half ago, he's going to miss because he's unvaccinated. So it's very Kirk Cousins, very Minnesota Vikings-esque to have that happen against the Packers on Sunday Night Football in Week 17. So speaking of quarterbacks, and that's all we've been talking about today, is this going to be Russell Wilson's last start in Seattle as a member of the Seahawks?
I think so. I think he's kind of been hinting at this a lot, just kind of with what he's kind of saying in the press conferences. Like, yeah, it's kind of one of those where I think if you kind of look at what Seattle's been Russ's whole time, they've really been the same kind of team, same core players his whole entire time there. So there's a lot I think that could definitely change for Russ in a different spot in terms of just I think how he's kind of going to be able to handle games himself, not always maybe have to carry the team on his own back. So I do believe this will be his last game, and I really actually am kind of more interested to see what happens with Pete Carroll if he's back next year with the Seahawks. Definitely one of the guys that personally I think he's a little overrated, just because I think he does some of the most crazy stunts at times when it's unnecessary. But yeah, I just think there's going to be a lot of teams that I think if they don't get a Rodgers, I think Wilson is kind of who the rest of the league is going to kind of see as the best option out there.
And the question also is Schneider going to stay in Seattle? Because I think both him and Carroll clearly don't like each other. Maybe the front office in Seattle kind of wants to give Schneider a chance where Carroll's not in the way of everything else. Look, Wilson's clearly overstayed his welcome. He clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. I think the fan base has realized, look, we don't have a first-round pick. Let's get a first-round pick if we can. Doesn't matter where it is at this point because they just need something because they're clearly a ways away, especially in that division. But the question you look at Russell Wilson is, what does he have left? And I think he still could be a good quarterback, but you're watching some of these Seahawks games and the last week standing. I mean, the defense collapsed against Nick Foles in the snow in Seattle against the Bears, but clearly Russ is not the same guy. And he's had DK Metcalf for the bulk of the year, and he's had Tyler Lockett. Now, maybe that injury that he healed quicker than normal is still bothering him, and that could be a factor too. But and no running game, and the offensive line's been bad for years. But you kind of wonder, okay, we've always put Russell Wilson in this top tier of quarterbacks, and he's probably in that second, third tier now. I don't think he's in that elite tier anymore. And I think he still gets talked about that way because there's, like I mentioned last week, the Ram game 2 weeks ago, where honestly, Wilson was the one overthrowing and underthrowing guys, not his talent struggling around him.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I've actually been saying for a little bit that I think he's kind of, to what Braden said, has been a little bit overrated. I think we've seen over the last couple of seasons, he had a really good year last year, but he tends to, very Jekyll and Hyde. First half great, second half not so great. And when that happens repeatedly, it's kind of like Cliff Kingsbury coaching. Going all the way back to Texas Tech, if you want to go that far. Hey, great start, but just fades at the end. That's not a good habit to make. If it happens every so often, if you have a stretch, where you're playing well and excuse me, sorry guys, and maybe you have a couple games towards the end where you're not so at the same. Apparently, I'm completely going. I don't know what's happening. I'm losing my voice apparently, but no. So you can have stretches where you play poorly and still have a great season, but it seems to be a habit. It seems to be a pattern with Russell Wilson. You remember the start of last season where it was like, oh my God, I mean, I can't believe this guy has never gotten an MVP vote. And you're like, there's no possible way that he can maybe not win it by the end of the season, but there's no possible way he's not going to get some sort of recognition or at least some sort. I mean, he was so out of that picture, not even by the season's end. And that was a drastic fall off for a guy who had such a great start last year. And I think you're seeing a little bit of the same. You're seeing a little bit of the same now this year. So, I think to that point, I think he's got to go to a good situation, perhaps down in New Orleans. It might be the best. You have, a guy that's probably, and Sean Payton's probably going to be able to utilize his abilities to the best of his abilities, kind of like the Bill Belichick philosophy. Don't put a guy in a position to fail. I mean, bad coaches do that all the time. Great coaches don't. And I think Sean Payton will do what he has to do to get the most out of Russell Wilson. Plus, I think they do have some talent. You put him with Alvin Kamara, you put him with a healthy Mike Thomas, all of a sudden you're starting to, maybe resemble a little bit more of that Seahawks offense that, was a really potent unit and certainly one that helped them win and go to a Super Bowl. So to me, I think maybe New Orleans is probably going to be that best option for him. But, at the end of the day, if you're a fan, you better hope that your franchise views him for what he is, to your point, Ricky, and not what the perception of him is. And, the perception of Russell Wilson is, hands down, top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league. And I'm starting to think like, well, Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, that's 3 right there. Can you, I can probably think of a few more quarterbacks that are better than Russell Wilson, which puts Russell Wilson on the fringe top 10 at this point. So, yeah, you better hope as a franchise that you value him appropriately. Is he going to garner a first round pick? Probably, because it's a quarterback. I mean, you got to figure, despite where he is in his career, he's going to at least command at least a first round pick, but don't sell the farm. Don't do what Seattle did to get Jamal Adams. Let's put it that way. Don't, multiple picks, all that stuff. Like, I don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, if you're Seattle, just, prepare for the worst, Maybe Matt Flynn's still available. I'm pretty sure he said something about coming out and playing again recently. So maybe he'll. Oh, apparently my cat's climbing all over around me behind me. So if you see me running behind, that's probably what happens. But anyway, so be interesting to see what happens with Russell Wilson, obviously the rest of this season, and of course into the off season. So, all right, guys. All right. So every week we do our props, and through our friends at Pickup, you can visit them at playpickup.com. Sign up, participate, do all that fun stuff, place some bets if you're responsible enough, of course. So we like to have a little bit of fun here. So this is what we're going to do. Big matchup with Miami and Tennessee coming up today. You have Ryan Tannehill playing the Dolphins, the team that he came into the league with, going up against a team that has won 7 in a row after a 1-7 start. And also Tennessee, all of a sudden, is starting to look a little bit healthier. Who has more passing touchdowns, Tua, Ryan, or are they going to have the same?
We rarely do this on this show. I'm going to go same. And you look at the weather today. It was Diane Rossini had it today. 73 degrees in Nashville on Saturday. Today it's 39 with rain, snow mixed in. The last time the Titans played in bad weather, they got 4 turnovers against the Texans. I don't think Tua can really play bad weather either. This game has ugly football. I think the over-under was like 39 or something like that. It's a weird number. Maybe both get 1 touchdown. To me, it's just who makes the fewer mistakes in this game. So I'll say both get 1.
I'm gonna go Tannehill just to be different. I think Miami's kind of more willing to lean on their running game right now, and I think Tannehill, this may be a game that the Titans maybe kind of let him create a little more on his own, knowing that it's going up against his one of his former teams. So I'm gonna go Tannehill on this one. I don't expect there to be a lot of points though, so maybe Tua doesn't have any at all.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too. They could both be shut out. I do think the Titans. I think Titans will have a better game. Or at least Ryan Tannehill will just maybe a little motivating factor. And look, Tennessee's right in the hunt for that number 1 seed. So they're going to be playing. This isn't a team that's going to be playing at a lesser level than the Dolphins, who are obviously fighting for their playoff lives too. I mean, they're both kind of really, really pushing hard here at the end of the season. And the Titans, if you think about it, that's a team that probably needs that first round bye more than anyone. You get that first weekend off, all of a sudden, the prospect of having Derrick Henry, who has been out there running and getting closer to full speed, the prospect of having Derrick Henry healthy for your first playoff game goes up dramatically. So Titans are going to have a lot to fight for, and I think the extra motivation with Tannehill, being able to play his former team, is going to be, maybe push him over there. So I'll take Tannehill. So this is going to be exciting. I can't wait. We're in good shape moving forward with a lot of young quarterbacks, a lot of great young quarterbacks. Obviously, last week we have Joe Burrow, 5 touchdowns, over 500 yards. Folks, let's relax a little bit, all right? And I know I'm gonna knock some Chiefs fans, out of their chairs right now. Let's stop with the over anointing of these young quarterbacks. And I'm talking about Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But when you're sitting up here telling me, oh, Joe Burrow's already better than Patrick Mahomes, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, this is the exact same thing that I railed against when Patrick Mahomes first came into the league. You got to let these kids have their careers play out. You can't, elevate them 1 week, and it's a bigger picture than that. I understand it's about reaction. It's about having a take. But the reality of it is Patrick Mahomes is a far better quarterback than Joe Burrow. That does not mean Joe Burrow and the Bengals cannot win this game, and he cannot have a better game this week. And that might happen. I mean, again, I'm going to ask you guys before we get to this question, is there a better 3 wide receiver combo in the league than what the Bengals have right now?
No, I would maybe put Dallas there, but I think Amari Cooper is just slightly overrated for me. So I'm going to have to agree with you on the Bengals.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Bengals. Like, they could have a bad 3 quarters, and then Joe Burrow could just hit 1 60-yard play to one of those 3 guys and instantly change the game. As you almost saw them steal the Niners game because of that. So, No, I think those 3, and you throw Mixon in there as guys can catch the ball too. I mean, so many options at Burrow's disposal.
Yeah, so, I mean, I anticipate this being a fairly high-scoring game. You want to be able to if you get the Chiefs team that played the Raiders that were just clicking on all cylinders on offense, you could be looking at a 35-38 type of game this week. So assuming that's the case, I think you're going to get a good number of touchdown passes between the two, and certainly passing yards. So who throws for more yards in this one?
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to go with
yeah,
Patrick
I'm
Mahomes,
actually
and the
going to
only
go.
could use.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Wow, that was kind of weird. Maybe did I disconnect there? Did I lose everyone here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe not. Anyway, so I apologize. That was on me. Mahomes, Burrow, who has more passing yards, and Ricky, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs, and it's mainly about situation. Hilaire being out for the Chiefs, I think, is a big deal. I mean, I think they have Jerick McKinnon, I think, when I noticed it, running back, but you got Joe Mixon for the Bengals. And I think the key in this game is going to be get Joe Mixon the ball, keep Mahomes on the sideline. Burrow's still going to throw for a good amount of yards. I mean, that's going to be something that's obvious. I just think the Chiefs with Kelsey back now, I think Hill's going to get more than he did last week. I think Mahomes slightly gets more than Burrow just because the Chiefs need him to.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mahomes just because I think this is kind of a secondary that can kind of play that Bengals receiving core a little bit tougher. Spagnuolo likes to press and kind of keep the lid on top of guys. So I think forcing the ball down the field, it's going to kind of be interesting to see how much Burrow attacks with that early on and if he's going to kind of stick with that. But Travis Kelce being back this week, that'll also help Mahomes. So his security blanket being back, I think will put him over the edge as well.
Yeah, I've honestly gone back and forth on this. I'm like, well, on one side, like you said, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not going to be playing today, so okay, that takes away a part of your running game. You get Kelce back, you get Tyreek Hill back, but to what Tyreek Hill said earlier this week, he's still dealing with some of the COVID issues when it comes to endurance. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we saw it affect him last week to the tune of, did he finish with just the 2 catches? I can't remember, Brady. It was just the 2. Yeah. So
I don't think he played much in the second half either.
Yeah. So that's certainly going to be something to monitor in this game. You would hope that he's feeling a little bit better this week, and you would anticipate that he probably is, but certainly not something to overlook. And then in the same sense, Travis Kelce, now he's returning from that. So is he going to have the same issues? I think both players are going to throw a lot of yards. So really, to me, I flip a coin. I'll go with Joe Burrow. It doesn't mean I think they're going to win. I'll save that for later in the show when we make our picks. But I do think he edges them out just a little bit. But, there's a potential both these guys are going to throw at least 300, 330, something like that. It could. I'm hoping for something really fun. Let's just put it that way. All right, next one. Let's see. What do we got? Oh, here we go. Look at that. Joe Mixon. See, I planned these somewhat, and it works out pretty well. We just talked about Joe Mixon. He's obviously the key. I mean, he may be one of the top 3-4 running backs in the entire league. He's certainly the best running back on the field today. Rushing yards in this game, over under 71.5.
I'm going to go over just for the reasons I said earlier, but to add one more quick thing to that, the last time Joe Mixon went over 71.5 was the end of November against Pittsburgh. So this number may seem obvious, but Mixon hasn't done that in a while, but I'll still go the over.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. I think this is kind of one of those games where I think Mixon's late game push is going to kind of be something to watch in this one, maybe when it's a tight game. So maybe when the Chiefs are kind of focused on Burrow, I think Mixon will kind of pull off some big gains. So I'll go over as well.
Yeah, we'll make it a 3 for 3. I'll take the over. So next. Oh, look at that. Jets, Bucks. We talked about it a little bit. Tom Brady obviously getting to see a familiar opponent in the New York Jets, perhaps for the very last time in his career. Although I would bet more on Brady playing an additional 4 years than I would the Jets making it to the Super Bowl and having a chance to play Brady again. So, but in this game, the Bucks are obviously still there. I believe they're still in contention for that number 1 overall seed, although they're going to need a lot of things to go right for them, including 0-2 for the Packers the last couple weeks of the season. But in this game, they have a pretty easy landing spot after a tough stretch. Over under 46.5 points total between these two teams in this game.
Barely over. And the reason is I think they're going to score a lot of points. And you look at the Jets situation, they've had a lot of COVID issues and injuries that affects their team, and good for them for getting a win last week. You also have Keyshawn Vaughn got a touchdown last week, Ronald Jones did, so that should help Tampa Bay. The one thing you kind of not worry about, but you wonder if this is Antonio Brown incentive season, and you wonder if Tom Brady tries to force a couple into Antonio Brown to maybe try to get him those incentives. But this game has 38-10 written all over it, so it's over, but it's barely.
I'm going to go slightly under just because I do think the Bucks still maybe don't light up the scoreboard quite as much as we're used to seeing. And also Zach Wilson, he's playing pretty well lately, but this secondary I think is kind of flying under the radar right now for the Bucks. They're getting healthier. Obviously, Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean coming off the COVID list for him yesterday is a big deal in this one. So I really like how their secondary is playing as the playoffs get closer. So I'm actually going to go slightly under here.
Yeah, I am gonna go over, and kind of to Ricky's point, I think it's gonna be a lot of heavy lifting on the Bucks part. And you also add in the fact that assuming Mike Evans plays, he's 101 yards shy of his 8th consecutive 1,000-yard season. So I think that's
I think he's playing, but he's very limited. So I don't really know how much you'll see him, if you do see him much at all.
Yeah, I exactly. I don't know if he's going to be out there, but it could also kind of, to the Antonio Brown point, it could incentivize Brady in the offense to kind of push the ball towards him a bit. And I wonder if maybe you see a little bit more out of Le'Veon Bell, just to kind of see what he has to offer, because I think the Bucs still may not know, just being with the team for about a week and a half. I do anticipate a pretty strong outing from Brady himself. I don't think he necessarily cares about the MVP, certainly not as much as I do, apparently. But I do think he's going to have a really solid statistical game, talking 3 touchdowns, maybe, over 300 yards. I mean, the guy's just on the cusp of 5,000. And I do think that does mean a little bit to him, or at least to the Bucs, and I think it's going to make a point to get him that. So I do think it's over, and I do think it's a lot of heavy lifting by the Bucs offense. So there we go. 24.5 touches for Jonathan Taylor versus the Raiders in this game. Over under that number. What do you think?
Definitely over. And it's really just because, Carson Wentz is going to play today. Somehow he's going to play today. I'm still skeptical of how he's able to play so quickly, but that's the protocols. But this offense runs through him. You even mentioned, Ian, with the endurance thing. We have to see even how effective Wentz actually is. So yeah, Taylor's going to get fed early and often today.
Yeah, I don't think it would be even surprising to see him hit it in the first half, especially if the Raiders offense kind of flounders as much as they have the last month or so. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to it. Like Ricky said, Wentz's endurance, I don't really know how well that's going to be. So I'm going to go over here.
All right. Deebo Samuel, reception yards total versus the Texans. Over, under 44.5. No Jimmy G. Trey Lance. Not that
I'll still take the over, because the thing with Deebo Samuel is all it takes is one 45-yard screen pass and changes the entire thing. And with Trey Lance, I could see it being a lot of short passes and RPOs, roll out to the right, hit Samuel open for a quick 10-yard pass, get a couple of those, you're already over the number. You could even make the case you might even see more rushing from Deebo Samuel today than receiving, but I think he'll easily make that over.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. Pretty small number, like you said. I think like a pass or something, which is in there, RPO action, quick pass out to the flats, that could easily get him over on one play. So pretty low number. I got to go over.
All right. Trayvon Diggs will have his 12th interception of the season versus the sinking, or the floundering, or the fluttering, whatever you want to call them, whatever analogy you want to call them. The Cardinals are just nose diving out of the top teams of the NFC. Is Trayvon Diggs going to make them pay with his 12th pick this season? Yes or not happening?
It just seems so obvious it's yes, I'm going to go not happening. I think Dallas maybe gets more interceptions with their defensive line, it seems, with Lawrence and Gregory and Parsons that they do with their secondary. And maybe it's about, I think maybe Arizona tries to throw the ball less. I don't know 100% sure if James Conner is playing today, but if he is with Chase Edmonds, you'll see more, I think, rushing attack, try to keep that offense more balanced. So I'll say no, and that the defensive line gets the picks, not the secondary today.
I'm going to go no as well. I do think that I think there's going to be a game where, like you said, I think the running's going to kind of be involved, but I think that's actually going to be focused more on Kyler as well, kind of allowing him to create himself. So don't know how much they're going to kind of try to throw at Diggs as well, not knowing necessarily who he's going to cover with Hopkins out. So I'm going to go not happening.
All right. That's it. I had a feeling that was the last one. So that means we're up to our picks. Got a lot of games today. Obviously, no Thursday night football. One Monday night game. So everything is jam-packed here on Sunday. And so let's dive right into it. So Buffalo Bills. Let's start off with them in Buffalo hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Buffalo obviously retook the lead in the AFC East, although they do share the same record as the Patriots. So they're going to need to continue to win in order to keep this AFC East division title dream alive. I think they do. I mean, unfortunately, they're playing the Falcons, so there's not going to be much resistance on their part. So at home, I got the Buffalo Bills winning this one.
Yeah, shout out to Josh Allen last week. I know answered a lot of the critics. Didn't even punt the ball once last week, and so many big third down conversions the Bills made. So they deserve that win in Gillette. And we can get to the Patriots later when we get to their game, what they need to do this week. Personally, guys, I'm shocked that do you guys know the spread on this game?
I think 14.5.
Yeah, something like that.
I am shocked it's that. Honestly, that's kind of disrespectful to Atlanta, who is a 7-8 team and is fighting for a playoff spot still, as slim as their chances are. I think this game is closer than the odds seem to think it is, because Matt Ryan, he's played up in the cold before. Patterson can run the ball. Maybe Buffalo's sleeping a little bit after an emotional win last week. I think it's closer than the 14.5. I think the Bills pull away late.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. The thing is, I think the Bills are kind of one of those that actually have been pretty good this season. I believe they've only lost maybe one game where they've been favored over 10 points, so, or didn't cover, I should say. But yeah, the Falcons kind of weird. I mean, one of the weirdest 7-8 teams that I can remember. They beat the horrible teams. This is kind of a game, though, they don't really fare too well in. So I think this will be a big win for the Bills at home.
All right, next we have the Bears hosting the Giants, and a less than ideal viewing matchup for anyone out there who wants to watch football. I took Chicago because they're at home, and I do think they're probably a slightly better team. But it's I'm probably not going to watch too much of this game. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, give me the Bears in this one.
In the big picture, the Giants win because if they lose, they still have a good pick, and if they win, they get a good pick because they got the Bears pick anyway. So in the battle of Andy Dalton, Mike Glennon, I'll take the Bears because the Giants are just terrible.
Yeah, the Giants could arguably be the worst team in football right now. I've seen a lot of people say that this week, and I disagree with them. I think the Bears also fighting hard to end this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of fight today with Matt Nagy's one of his last couple games here probably. So yeah, I got the Bears as well. Don't think it'll be a big win. I don't think it'll be pretty, but they're playing a lot more harder right now.
Unfortunately, the NFL decided to just pack in all the best games on the 1:00 hour this week because, well, the three most interesting games, in my opinion, outside of the Sunday night football game, all happen at 1:00. And the first one starts here with Kansas City heading to Cincinnati. And much like the back and forth that I was going with when it comes to the passing yard totals for both, I was doing the same with this game. Cincinnati, when they're on their game, they can look like the best team in the NFL. But again, flip a coin, because you might get it one half, you might not get it the second, you might get it in one quarter, you might not get it in the second. And then, of course, there's always that feeling that they're going to bungle, they're going to do what they do. I think less of that is happening with this team because I really do like Joe Burrow. I do like what they have on offense. I'm a big fan of Joe Mixon. I actually Last year, I thought he was going to have maybe not necessarily a Jonathan Taylor type season, but a season in which he led the league in rushing. He's not quite there yet, but like I said earlier, I mean, he's one of the better running backs in this league. I'm going to take the Bengals, and a part of it's a little bit of wishful thinking, a little bit of my fandom creeping into it. But at the end of the day, I think this offense is going to just score enough on on a Kansas City team to, like I said, I mean, you're having. I want to see what Tyreek Hill is. I want to see what Travis Kelce, how he looks coming out on the field, because COVID's no joke, and it could really hinder what they're able to do on offense. And against a team like the Bengals, that could be tough if you struggle a little bit on offense. So I'm going to take the Bengals, and I hope that I don't have to eat crow when I get back on the show on Monday. So
I think this is one of those games where if Cincinnati can keep it competitive, stay in the game, make it a close game late, and they still end up losing, people are going to be like, you know what, Cincinnati can challenge them in the postseason. So there's a way to lose this game and still look good for the Bengals, especially if Burrow plays well. The fact of the matter is, and the Bengals kind of proved they're semi not the Bungles anymore because they did have a huge performance in a big game last week. But it's hard to not trust Andy Reid over Zach Taylor. It's hard not to trust this Chiefs defense, which has played pretty well as Brady contested over the last 2 months, and they still need the game to the number 1 seed in the AFC. I think they've got their full pieces back, and I think they didn't have their full pieces back last week and were up 3-0 in the third quarter, even though Pittsburgh is mediocre on offense. But I'll still take Kansas City slightly on the road, just because I feel like the more people back Cincinnati, the more it's like, you know what, they're still the Chiefs, and they're going to, I think, show that today.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that's kind of going to go into that from the defensive perspective going up against Burrow. I think those kind of talking head points are going to be in their minds today. I just think the Chiefs defense, until they kind of give up, a lot of points consistently, I just cannot pick against them right now. I mean, they're giving up, I think it's right now maybe only like 10 points in the last 6 games per half. So I just think this Chiefs defense right now, they're a little bit deeper than the Bengals are. I like the Bengals secondary a lot, but I think this is a kind of a group that can get into Burrow's head just enough. So I'm going to go Chiefs on the road here.
Next, we have the Titans hosting the Miami Dolphins. And as much as I am impressed with what the Dolphins are doing, I do like the Titans in this game, because I do think they're getting, they've been playing better football. They've resembled more of the team that was presumptively one of the better teams in the AFC. And look, you got to give the Dolphins credit. I mean, they've been playing playoff football for 2.5 months now. I mean, they lose any of these games, their playoff hopes are likely done, and it's been that way since they started 1-7. So you're talking since the beginning of November. I think they fade a little bit here, because I do think Tennessee at home, I think they're going to get the job done here. I think, as I mentioned before, I think Ryan Tannehill is going to have a little bit of, extra little motivation in this one. And just as much as Miami's fighting for their playoff positioning, so are the Titans. So give me the Titans at home.
This is definitely a low-scoring game. I mentioned earlier, to me, it just comes down to who turns it over less. As much as Tua's improved, I think Tennessee turns it over a little bit less. It's like 19-16. I'll go Tennessee, but if you're a Patriots fan, root for Tennessee today. Plus, if they do win, it helps you get in the playoffs. But if Miami wins, that game against Miami is going to be on Saturday. And I don't want to go on a short week to South Beach, where New England historically struggles. So I'll go with Ian's wishful thinking, but also think at the same time, Tennessee can survive a low-scoring game.
I'd love to see a Miami win here, but this one kind of feels like the Week 17 game to me last year that the Dolphins had, kind of riding this momentum and then having to go against a team that's at the top of the playoff picture. Can they come through? I just don't think that the Titans are going to let that happen. I think they kind of refound their footing last week with that second half surge against the 49ers. And like you guys said, Tannehill going up against his old team, I think he's going to be locked in today. So I got to go Titans here, but I do think it'll come down to the wire.
All right. All right. We got the Colts hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. We talked about this game a little bit earlier, how important Jonathan Taylor is going to be. He's likely going to see a fairly heavy workload this game. And I like the Colts even at home, even if Carson Wentz is a little at a lower percentage, maybe not as healthy or not feeling as great. I still like the Colts at home in this one.
I still wish they were able to get Philip Rivers out of retirement for this game. That would have been pretty cool. The problem with Vegas is, and I thought about picking Vegas at the beginning of the week, they missed Darren Waller. If you think about the word MVP, Darren Waller would fit in that situation because, yes, they beat Dallas on Thanksgiving, but their offense hasn't been the same since Waller went down. They don't have the weapons against a Colt defense that's getting healthier, more people coming off the COVID list. Indianapolis with defense wins this game.
I'm going to go Colts as well. I do not think they cover just because I think it seems like every Colts game is kind of destined to be wacky and crazy up until the end. But I do trust their defense a little bit more, especially when you have Jonathan Taylor probably getting, I think, 35, 40 touches almost in this game. So close one, but I'll go Colts.
All right, next we have New England hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, the Patriots are on a 2-game skid after their 7-game winning streak, losing to 2 good teams. The 2 teams that one team we just talked about and one we're going to talk about here in just a minute, or actually we talked about when we first started our picks in Buffalo. So no shame in that. You want to see the Patriots, if you're a Patriot fan, kind of get back on the offensive groove against a team that's, they're not a good team. So you need to win this game. I think the Patriots do. How impressive they are, I think, is going to be important as to how much confidence you have moving forward in them. If they go out and blow out Jacksonville, I think you can feel pretty well that this Patriots team is going to have a decent chance in the playoffs. If they struggle to beat this team, then maybe we have to rethink it. But I do like the Patriots' chances in this one, and I anticipate a pretty impressive win for this group to move to 10-6.
And no James Robinson for Jacksonville today,
Yes,
so they really have nothing offensively. To me, it's kind of like with Dallas last week. They're going to win the game. You shouldn't really care about the result. You got to care more about how the result happens if you're, like Ian said, if you're the Patriots. And to me, it's about getting Mac Jones back to basics. Throw some more screens. Get him confident. Charles Davis brought up a good point on the telecast last week, and they talked to Mac Jones. I think his confidence was mentally shaken by only throwing the ball 3 times. And the game plan worked, but you can tell he's not confident anymore. You got to get him back to the short passes. Stop trying to buy into you need to throw downfield. No, you need to do what Mac Jones does best, and that's be accurate. So they can run the ball, and I want to see this defense step up because that defense was embarrassing last week, and they still have big names. I know June on the COVID list, so you wonder if that affected him in the game Sunday. But to not allow the Bills to punt, this defense needs a wake-up call, and we'll see if it happens today.
I always kind of remember the stat of what Belichick is at home against rookie quarterbacks. I think that that obviously is going to factor in heavily today when you look at what Lawrence has kind of failed to produce in the last, I think it's 8 games now, maybe 7 or 8 games with 1 touchdown passes also. Just the history there with the big Patriots win at home.
All right, next we have the Jets hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 44-year-old Tom Brady versus 22-year-old Zach Wilson, born on the exact same day, 22 years apart. Talked about it earlier. I think this is a Tampa, kind of to Ricky's point, a 38-10 type of win. They're going to cover that spread, and it's mostly going to be, they're going to cover that over under total points that we talked about earlier. And by, basically a lot of heavy lifting by the Bucs offense. I just think this is a game that sort of kind of like the Patriots. You want to see this Bucs team, if you're a Bucs fan, beat this team pretty handily. They've had moments where they've looked really good, and they've also had moments where they haven't. So, going into the playoffs, you want to see that. And of course, you want to hope that you can keep pace with at least the Packers and hope that maybe they stumble here down the stretch. But yeah, I like the Buccaneers pretty easily here.
Yeah, specifically on defense, I think you want to see that because offensively they answered that last week, 32-6 against Carolina. You can clearly see the offense is there, but when you're potentially maybe have to go on the road and play a Rodgers or Dak Prescott or a Matt Stafford, you want to see progressing in the right direction. It's also revenge week for Todd Bowles, and he wants to wreak havoc on the Jets. So Tampa should win, like I said, 38-10 kind of ball game.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think this is going to be a Zach Wilson game, maybe similar to what we saw earlier in the year. Multiple interceptions, multiple turnovers, so Bucs win heavily.
Next, we have the Eagles traveling to take on the Washington football team. The football team is, I mean, who knows what they are after getting walloped 56-7 or whatever the final. I just know they gave up 56 points. I like Philadelphia on the road in this one. I have to think that beat down last week is really going to loom large on a team that's really kind of in I don't know. They're kind of in NFL purgatory. I don't think they're good. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they have any really good prospects or you know what I mean. I think they're just they just exist as a team in this league. And ironically, they're called the football team. So to me, I think Washington's just going to come out flat. I mean, I can't see them putting up a strong performance, and even against a divisional rival. So give me Philadelphia.
I'm going to go with the Eagles. Largely, Antonio Gibson being out for Washington doesn't help, and you can just tell Washington spent between COVID, playing all these division games. Philly needs the game more. I know they don't have Miles Sanders today, but this is a must-win for the Eagles, and I think Jalen Hurts finds a way to win another ugly type of game, but Philly gets the W.
Not only is Washington flat, but Philly, I think, is probably playing the best they have all season. Definitely not a team I expected to be in the playoffs this year, but this is kind of a team I think you can maybe look at wild card teams in the NFC and think that this is one that could actually challenge teams a little bit. Jalen Hurts right now really doing a good job of running this offense, so don't really actually anticipate this being close today. I think Philly wins big on the road.
All right, next we have the Rams heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. No Lamar Jackson. You're going to get Tyler Huntley for the second straight week, but that may not be a bad thing for the Ravens. However, I do have the Rams winning this game. I would love to see another repeat performance by Tyler Huntley. I just don't know if you can bank on that, and I gotta anticipate he's going to come down to earth a little bit against for everything we say about the Rams. They're still a really good team with a really good defense. So I like the Rams in this one to close out our 1:00 games.
Matthew Stafford had 3 picks last week, and they still found a way to win on the road. It's back-to-back 1:00 games, so there's no time issue here. And it's just basically, I think, to me, defense and Sony Michel. Sony Michel was great last week. I think he's going to do the same this week. I don't know really what Baltimore has left. I want to pick the Ravens, but I don't know how they're going to perform today. And I think you kind of know what the Rams are going to do. So LA, because they're more consistent, I'll give them the slight edge, but it's close.
This could be a day that Cooper Kupp maybe has a day that Jackson Smith and Jigba had last night for Ohio State. Ravens right now 30th in pass DVOA. I think that's really kind of flown under the radar with Lamar Jackson's injury. This is definitely one of the worst secondaries I can remember John Harbaugh team having. So Matthew Stafford, that bodes well for him, and Cooper Kupp today. Rams win.
All right, next we have the other Los Angeles team hosting the Denver Broncos in an AFC West battle. I like the Chargers in this one. I just, at the end of the day, I think they're just a better team than Denver, and fighting for a playoff spot. So give me the Chargers.
I don't know what the Chargers are right now. I mean, it's a team that blew the Chief game, was awful against the Texans. I know they're getting people back, and I know Denver is kind of but both running backs are going to play. Denver made Herbert look awful a few weeks ago. SoFi is not really a home game. I'm talking myself into this. I don't really know what the Chargers have left, even though they're getting people back. Like Echo, I think, is back this week. I'm going to take Denver on the road and hope it's a low-scoring game. But I need to see the Chargers actually put it together for another week because they've been bad the last 6 quarters or so.
Yeah, I kind of had the same train of thought as Ricky earlier in the week, but then I kind of remembered what Drew Lock kind of got me last week when I picked Denver. So I just cannot put my eggs in his basket. And I think Justin Herbert coming off a loss is gonna kind of be out for revenge, knowing that Denver kind of gave him one of his worst performances earlier in the year. So I'm gonna go with the Chargers here.
All right, next we have San Francisco hosting Houston. Obviously no Jimmy G for San Francisco. I still like the 49ers in this game at home. They've been playing some really good football. So, give me the 49ers and Trey Lance.
Again, shout out to the Texans. Davis Mills, I think, has earned another year there because I want to see what he can do with talent because he actually can throw the ball downfield to former Patriots, Bill Dorsett and Rex Burkhead were having big games last week. But I think the Niners will keep things simple for Trey Lance. I think Elijah Mitchell is supposed to be back too, so that should help their ground game. Niners should take care of business and should be pretty comfortably.
I'm actually going to go with the Texans upset here. This is kind of one of those games where personally I just don't buy the 49ers that much going into the playoffs, and this is kind of one of those games where I think offensive scheme wise. You kind of see where Shanahan maybe lacks once in a while. Texans defense actually playing pretty well lately, so they could get some more turnovers today. Got to go with at least one upset pick. I'm going to go Houston on the road.
All right, next, Dallas hosting Cardinals. I don't really have much more to add to this other than Dallas is going to win this game because I think the Cardinals are doing what they do every year and doing what Cliff Kingsbury teams do every year, and that is plummet off of their big start. So give me the Dallas Cowboys.
The problem is you can't really rely on Mike McCarthy to implode because even if he does, Cliff Kingsbury might do the same thing. Like you can try to talk yourself into the Cardinals. They're 7-1 on the road, but their one loss is to Detroit. So that you can't even use that stat. It's weird. I think so many people are buying Dallas that you can almost make the case for Arizona because of that. Dallas, I think Arizona covers because it's 6.5, but I think Dallas finds a way to win at the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Arizona covers, but not only do they flounder, I think they kind of come up short, obviously, in the closest of games. So kind of similar maybe to that Thursday night game earlier this year against Green Bay. Wouldn't be surprised if they have a chance to win it and a turnover happens. Trayvon Diggs or somebody else kind of gets the tip interception or something like that. So close game, but I'll go Dallas.
All right, next, New Orleans hosting Carolina. Yeah. New Orleans, sure, because they're at home. I mean, I don't know. Like, I can ask the question, like, who's going to play quarterback for the Saints, and you'd be like, oh, that's not good. But at the same time, I would be like, all right, I know who's playing quarterback for the Panthers, and I'm still getting the same reaction. So I'll take the home team. Give me the Saints in this one, I guess.
Yeah, battle of two teams that don't have a quarterback, but at least the Saints have a defense. They have a ground game. They have a coach. So, yeah, put those three things together. That's probably a recipe for a win. And you feel bad for the Saints because, honestly, we can rant about protocols all day. The Saints shouldn't have played that game Monday night. They were down like 25 players. Their third-string quarterback, they're like 7-string tackle. That's asking them to lose, and basically you should just give them a loss right there. I think they come out much better today. And Carolina right now is just playing out the string. So New Orleans stays alive for now.
Kind of an interesting report coming out of Carolina this week that Dave Tepper may be having buyer's remorse already on Matt Rule. I'm kind of surprised given how well of a program builder Rule has been. But yeah, like Ian said, I really don't have a good reason today. I'm just going to kind of trust Carolina's young defensive stars to kind of make some plays. I'm going to go Panthers, but not very confident in it.
Seattle hosting, we've already talked about Seattle a little bit, hosting the Detroit Lions. And, first glance, you think, oh, well, of course, Seattle's a better team. But are they? Is Seattle better than Detroit? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think we can sit here 100% say that the Lions, they play harder and they play more for they're more of a team right now than I think Seattle is. I still can't pick against Seattle in this because despite the issues, I think at home, I think maybe you're going to get a pretty good performance from Russell Wilson. And I think that it'll be enough to win this game. But I don't necessarily think that they're a worse team or a better team than Detroit. So.
And I think Jared Goff's out for the Lions too today. And I know Tim Boyle and the Lions almost beat Atlanta last week, but that's Atlanta. I guess Atlanta's better than Seattle, but is Russell Wilson really going to lose his last home game to Tim Boyle, Dan Campbell, and the Detroit Lions, especially when Adam Schefter at the stat today? If Russell Wilson wins this game, him and Pete Carroll tie Bill Belichick and Tom Brady for the most home wins in the regular season, I think, with 62. So that's a big stat for both those guys. I think they find a way. It's ugly, and there's better games on this 4:30 slate. So I would watch something else, unless Russ gets like a nice ovation or something. But Seattle wins.
Oh, wait, most home victories?
It's 62 home regular season victories, I think it is.
Oh, would that be like in a first X amount of seasons or something like that?
I have to. I can look it up real quick what the actual stat is, but it was something where if Russell Wilson wins today, then they tie Belichick and Brady with something.
I want to say it's probably because I've kind of railed on this a little bit. They've used the Russell Wilson most wins in his first 10 seasons or something like that.
Here it is. Entering Sunday's game, this is from Schefter. Carroll and Wilson have won 61 home games, including the playoffs, one behind Belichick and Brady, for the most by a coach quarterback duo since 2012.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay, all right. Because I was thinking I'm like that doesn't. I was thinking all time. I'm like that doesn't add up.
So in the last decade.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Which okay. Good for them. I mean, it's kind of like I said, that Russell Wilson stat where people he's had the most wins in his first 10 seasons or something like that, surpassing Brady. But we all know that Brady didn't play in 2000 or 2008, so it's yeah, you get where I'm going with this. Anyways, okay, that makes a lot more sense because I definitely was trying to do the math in my head, but it's way too early for me to do all that on the spot. So, anyways. Yeah, that's right. You haven't picked yet, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say Detroit, I'm going to kind of do what I've been doing for a lot of their games. They're 10-5 against the spread this year, so I think they'll cover. But in the end, I think Seattle will find a way to win the game late. Maybe a Wilson touchdown pass in his last possible home game as a Seahawk will get it done. But yeah, I do think Tim Boyle, that's kind of the ultimate difference to me. If Goff was playing, I might take Detroit to win this game, believe it or not. But yeah, I got to go Seattle.
All right. Last but not least, Sunday Night Football, the Green Bay Packers hosting the Minnesota Vikings. And I actually made my pick Friday about 30 seconds before we learned of Kirk Cousins being out. And that obviously means that I picked Minnesota. A lot of wishful thinking there. But in the same sense, also not necessarily an out there pick, considering they've already beaten the Packers this season. And, the Packers have been a lot of great start or slow start, pretty good in the middle, and then quiet in the second half. And, this is coming against teams like Baltimore, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So it's not necessarily a given that the Packers are going to, win this game. It's certainly a better chance now that Kirk Cousins is out. But since I've already made the pick, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to double pick. I'm going to go down with the ship if I have to, but I'm going to take Minnesota in this one.
See, the Vikings have beaten the Packers this year, which is all the reason to pick the Packers to win this time, because there's no way Mike Zimmer is going to sweep the Packers. And even with now Kirk Cousins out, I think Green Bay puts it together. I think Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon get the job done on the ground. And what's Sean Mannion really going to do in this game? I have no clue. So maybe Mannion succeeds to start because they don't know what you're going to see from the guy, but Packers should win. There's too much on the line.
Yeah. Plus the Packers got Toe Montana. That was one of my favorite nicknames I saw over the weekend. I got a chuckle out of that. But I guarantee you, he's not going to waste any time when it comes to wincing whenever he has an opportunity to, because we all know Aaron Rodgers likes to likes to play up that toe injury just a little bit here. So yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm right, I'll be pretty happy about it. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned. In a little bit, we're going to have FBC NFL Fantasy Sunday with Kyle Sunra. And of course, tune in Monday tomorrow for FBC Radio Live with myself and Mr. John Sapichetti as we react to all this. And I admit where I was wrong, which happens quite often. So have a great Sunday, everyone. Enjoy. Happy New Year. And we will talk